Reed. That's who's singing it with Billy Porter. I love that rendition of You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. I just think it is so, so cool. Okay, we are being joined now by Billy. Billy, thanks for joining us.
Hi, what's going on? Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. You know, you do such important work, and I'm just so glad that you had time to spend time to be on the show today because I want to talk about the census. But before that, just want to talk about some of the other important projects you're working on right now with the Urban League. Are you working on anything besides the census?
Yes, well, as you know, this is a big election year. So
yes, honey.
What we've set out to do at the Urban League, and certainly the Urban League Guild, is meld the two. So the first half, we'll be talking about the 2020 census, and then the second half of the year, we're talking about full steam ahead, registering people to vote and getting people to vote for the upcoming election. We say we don't care who you vote for, but we want you to vote.
Right. That is so, so important. And the deadline for voter registration is February 18th, I believe.
Correct.
And would you happen to have any information as far as early voting or anything?
No, no. Other than this cycle is largely judicial, and we have some state seats that are up. We need everybody out voting, getting your voice heard. Getting your voice heard, because this is an important election. We need to be voting from top to bottom. We were talking about voting for precinct committee people. Those elections are important too. As you go up and down the ballot, I want people out voting.
It is all important, and I'm so glad that you said that.
Yes.
So talk to us about the census. First of all, what is the census for people who still may not understand?
Okay, so the census is a count of every person that lives in the United States. It's done every 10 years. And in that census, that is where we get representation and resources. Resources meaning dollars, representation, who we send to Washington. And if the census is not done, if we're not properly counted, that can reduce our resources and reduce our representation. So the census is very, very important. And I'll give you a couple examples of where. So in 2010, which was the last census, the Census Bureau estimated that there were 47 million African Americans in the country that they counted within the census. Almost 2 million of that 47 million were incarcerated. Almost 2 million. So prisons are normally in rural areas that can have low population, but what they've been able to do is they get a count for every prisoner that is in that prison. Now, those prisoners or those people who offend normally would come from the inner city, largely from the inner city. So we miss out on that resources and representation, but those rural areas get that count. The census is... Go ahead.
Didn't I read recently that there was somebody introduced a bill to try to get the prisoners to count where they're from?
Correct.
Did you see anything like that?
Correct. Yes, but it hasn't got to the point where what is it? I think it's still in committee, and there are some places like all over the country, because states have realized, at least the inner cities and city governments has realized, they're kind of really being gypped out of that count.
Yep.
Yeah.
They sure are.
Yeah. So these are just things people need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
And so there's a number of ways that people can respond to the census. What are those ways they can respond?
I'm glad you asked that question. So this year, it will be different from the last time. So there are 4 ways you can respond to the census. You can now do it online. You can do it, you'll get a phone call, somebody will come to your door, or you can do it by mail. So those 4 ways: online, phone, someone will come to your door, or you can do it by mail.
Okay, so what are some of the reasons, like when people say that they don't want to be counted, what are some of the reasons that they sometimes say, no, I'm not going to do that?
Another great question. So I'm gonna take a step back from that. So the Urban League and the Urban League Guild has teamed up with National Action Network and the NAACP. So all last year, what we did was went around the area holding forums, telling people what the question that you just asked, dispelling the myths about the census. So people would say, I'm not going to fill out the census correctly because it may affect my food stamps. I'm not going to sign it correctly because it may affect a government subsidy that I'm getting, because I said on my food stamp application there's one person living in the house and there's actually three. Those two things do not go hand in hand. The Census Bureau does not operate with what they call them Obama phones, but government phones or food stamps or any other government assistance that you get. That is the biggest. Let me take it back. That's the second biggest reason why people don't fill the census out completely. The other one is immigration. People are very scared that if I fill it out and give a complete count in my house, then the government is coming to remove people who may have some questionable status. I'll put it that way.
But isn't that a legitimate reason to be concerned?
Not at this point, because again, the Census Bureau does not share that information with other government agencies.
Okay, so it's really important for people to believe that.
It's really important to believe for people to believe that and give an accurate count. So I can tell you just some of the things that we did last year and some of the things we'll be doing this year. So we've teamed up with the Greater Cleveland AIDS Task Force and the LGBT Center, because that's another part of our population that is seriously undercounted. The reason why is because those people are they move around a lot for various different reasons, so you can barely ever get an accurate count for them. So we've been working with them. Go ahead.
Okay, you said that the LGBTQ, that population moves around a lot?
Yes, it's especially the younger part of that population.
And why is that?
That is because and this goes really deep. That's because when they are coming to realize who they are, family members may not agree, so they are displaced, asked to leave, so on and so forth. A lot of them are couch hopping. So what we want is, if someone is staying in your house, that census just wants the count. That's it. We just want the count.
Okay. And that was important for you to share that reason, because I'm sure some of my listeners were wondering, why are they so mobile? Why do they move around? That's really important. Right. So, when we talk about the census coming up, there's jobs available still?
But you have the questions today. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah. So last year we went around to 3 organizations talking about how, one, it was important for people in our community to get those jobs, and we explained why that was important, because you were more apt to answer the door for somebody who looks like you or may stay down the street or a block over, as opposed to somebody who you don't know. So all of that was a practical reason for us to get out there and say, hey, go to 2020census.gov to apply. Last time we talked, which was last year, they had 8,000 jobs. They are now down to roughly about 1,500, 2,000 jobs left. Because they had.
You said that too fast. What's the address they should go to?
It is 2020census.gov/jobs.
Okay. And so, what kind of jobs are available? I mean, how much do people get? And
Okay. So they had what was called not census take. So there are some census taker positions still left, meaning those are the people that actually go knock on the doors, and those start out. The base starts out at $18 an hour. $18 an hour. So when
that's not bad.
Not bad. When we started last year, you could have got employed last year and worked a full year up until the time that the census ends completely, which is this year, making $18 an hour. So there are the census taker jobs. They were what were called surveyors. Now those people just walk through the community saying there's a vacant lot here, there's a house here. There's surveyors. Then there were the supervisor.
Okay, so wait a minute. Wait, slow down.
I'm sorry.
So the surveyors are able to tell you where actually residential homes are and where they aren't.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So so the surveyors don't interact with people. They just walk through the neighborhood and say, there's an empty lot here at this address. There's an actual house here, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Those are the surveyors. So then there are and were supervisors positions. Those are people who are in the office supervising those workers that go out in the community to take either the actual census or the surveyors. Now, Meryl, I'll tell you, the three organizations made a promise as we went out to people and asked them to apply for those jobs so we could get an accurate count. And that was that we would use our collective power to talk to the powers that be at the Census Bureau to make sure those positions were equitably passed out. So everybody got a crack at those jobs if they were qualified. We've gotten back word that those supervisors positions have not been passed out in an equitable way. So now we have to go.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So now we have to go and have a conversation with the Census Bureau and the powers that be to try and rectify that, because that's a promise that we made to people.
So who makes a decision as to who gets the job?
So it is a huge bureaucracy. So when you apply, whether it be for the census taker or a supervisor's position, actually there's a computer that gives you a score, and then it tells a hiring person whether or not you qualify for the job.
Well, I want my people to know who to call. I mean, we gotta do something about folks not being given the top position. So does it go all the way to the governor's office, or is there a state person in charge of the census? Can you give us that person or somebody that we can reach out to say we need some justice here?
Well, okay. So we will have that stuff posted on our social media. Because we're still in our deliberative stage of how we're going to attack this to get the best outcome.
When you say we, you mean the Urban League?
The Urban League, National Action Network, and NAACP. Because we don't want to just run out there. Right.
The NAACP, the National Action Network, and the Urban League.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So the three organizations are going to be taking a look at why these jobs are not being distributed equitably. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so you really haven't done the thorough research to find out who we can reach out to.
Only because we are just getting this information in. You see that? So we don't want to be knee jerk because we've been a partner with the Bureau so far. Yeah. And just because but the calls are trickling in to the three organizations that something is amiss. So we have to do our due diligence and find out what it is, and then confront it when we can. And then we certainly will let the public know what it is that they can do. Be that letters to the editors, or like you suggested, phone calls to certain people. We will get that information out there.
And you will be sure to send me that information so I can let my listeners know.
Absolutely,
correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, as a result, if we get good census results, that'll be really important as far as for this community. Can you also find out an update on the bill that's been proposed as far as making sure that people who are incarcerated, that counts toward their community instead of counting toward where the prison is? Because that's not fair.
No, it's not fair. No, it's not fair. When you talk about inner cities having railway systems and transportation, so on and so forth, we need those dollars. And in the state of Ohio, they've cut back resources that we would get from the state in regards to our transit system. We have the largest transit system in this area. We cannot afford cutbacks.
That's correct.
I believe RTA is getting ready to put another levy to ask us for another $7 million to make their shortfall.
Okay.
Because of state cutbacks.
Okay. All right. So I just think it's important for everybody to understand the census is so important. What can my listeners do to make sure that people understand just how important census is?
So what you can do as an individual, be talking to people about being honest enough to get an accurate count, because it affects our resources and representation. When you talk about how you get back and forth to work, how you get on the bus, transit, water, and anything that you use that's public, that comes out of census dollars in many ways. So we have to have an accurate count. So have conversations with people saying, hey, if they come, just give them an accurate count. Let's try to get an accurate count this time, because, Meryl, we have to live with these results for the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's important to remind people. So I'm looking at the Census 2020. It says, why apply? You're paid weekly. You get mileage, and then I like what they have where it says support your community. It says some of the things you've said already, but I just want to reinforce it.
Go ahead.
It says it helps determine your representation in Congress. It helps inform how billions of dollars are distributed for hospitals, schools, roads, and more. Okay, so we complain about the roads and so forth, and this helps determine how money is going to be distributed. And says temporary positions are available, and we've had the census every 10 years since 1790.
Yes, since 1790.
I didn't realize it was been that long.
Yes, the census is actually mentioned in the Constitution.
Very good.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yep, it's actually mentioned in the Constitution that there has to be a count of every American citizen every 10 years.
So are you working with the schools at all on this, Billy?
Okay, so I sit on the city of Cleveland's Complete Count Committee. Our president and CEO of the Urban League sits on the state. So yes, we're engaged. Wherever the census is being talked about, we're engaged in that somewhere. So we're getting the message out as far as we can. I think the city is doing a great job. I know last year they were really innovative and went to 107.9's big summer jam concert that they had. And there was a lot of young people there. They had 2020 census swag, so on and so forth. So they are trying to be really innovative in meeting people where they are to get this message out.
Is anything like that coming up this year?
Absolutely. You're going to see us everywhere.
The big 107.9 stuff. Are they doing anything big this year?
But this year, I think by the time 107.9's event, the event happens, the census will be over. But we will have commercials.
When is the official over date? When is it over?
It's a month. So it's May. I think it's May 1st to the end of that month. So it's only a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they need to do something before May 1st. They need to do
but
else.
The city will have radio ads. You'll start to hear it on ZAK 107.9. And if you go downtown, they have those advertising boards on each corner. The census information will be on there as well. So they're trying.
I'm talking about kids though. I'm talking about getting the young people. See, if young people can understand how important it is, then they'll tell their families. I'm wondering if there's lesson plans. If lesson plans have been developed where teachers can actually deal with the census with their students. I'm wondering.
What I will do, we have a 2020 Census Complete Count Committee meeting coming up next week, and I will raise that on your behalf and everybody's behalf about how are we directly contacting young people.
Yeah, lesson plans. Use the word lesson plans.
Lesson plans, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
See if there's any lesson plans that have been developed. Or, you could do it in a class period, but there still needs to be some lesson plans developed so that students understand how this affects money that goes to their schools. Because a lot of times, stuff is just like out there, and it's not really a part of what the students are living, and they need to understand it actually determines the quality of their life.
Correct.
And but I'm gonna do some asking around too, because I think that's something that's really, really important for there to be some lesson plans in the schools.
And you know what I appreciate about you is that in every kind of way, you're always trying to do your part. You know what I'm saying? That it's important because all of our parts come together to make a big picture. If we can only do something small, then just do that and let that be your part in it. Yeah,
well, that's important.
Yes.
And you and I think we're both examples of that. Everything matters.
Yeah, everything matters.
No matter how small it is, everything matters.
Everything matters.
Yeah.
And if and I'm talking to us as citizens, we have to stop being complacent, get off our behinds, do the census, go vote. Because just like you said, we complain about streets not being this or transit system not being that. We have direct control over that if we fill out the census correctly and if we go vote.
Yes, indeed.
One more
it's
subject.
It's a simple solution, and it's something that puts all of us on the same level, same playing field, as they say.
So I got one more thing that's coming out I just want you to be aware of, and it has to do in regards to the attempt to reduce the Cleveland City Council. So now
talk about that too.
So now the Urban League, National Action Network, and NAACP, the three organizations, are getting together to come out with a statement about the fact that we are against trying to reduce council, because what that does for our African American community and other communities, it will reduce our representation. Now, you tell me how a council person that lives in Ohio City can effectively represent somebody who lives in Glenville.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm glad you raised it.
Now, here's an example.
That's a very, very important issue. And that's going to be on the March 17th ballot.
They're trying to get
so
it there.
I am going to have some people to come on and talk about that, but I'm glad that you raised it now because that's something that everybody needs to be aware of. We do not need to decrease the number of city council representatives. Right now, there's 17, and 17 work for a city as large as Cleveland.
And so what we're saying is we on this, we side with council members, but we're also saying it's on us as citizens to elect good council members. And then council members, we're with you on this, but you guys have got to do your job. I believe that's a fair exchange.
Hold them accountable.
Yes.
They need to hold them accountable. If you're a council person, there are some council people who have regular meetings every month. I know I'm very, very proud of my council person, Blaine Griffin. He holds regular meetings. He responds immediately to issues. And people need to hold their city council members accountable instead of standing back complaining about, oh, he doesn't do anything. Well, that's your fault. It's his fault too, or her fault too, but it's also your fault if you're not holding them accountable.
My councilman, Kevin Conwell, holds 2 meetings a month.
I know he's such a good guy. He's so busy.
He goes door to door. If there's a flyer coming out saying that I don't know, there's a food bank somewhere, Kevin Conwell is out physically himself going door to door to pass that information out. A great council person. But I agree with you. It's up to us to we got to do our part in it. We got to hold them accountable. And if they're not doing their job, then we have to pick somebody else. But the attempt to try and
no. See, that's where I said differently. If they're not doing their job, get in their face.
No, yeah, to get them to change it.
I'm not going to wait till the next election to vote you out. If you're not doing your job, I'm going to get in your face and tell you what your job is and what you should be doing. And of course, I'll do it in a polite way.
Correct.
But my point is that they need to deal with it immediately because some of the council people have been allowed to get away with some stuff. Absolutely. And they need to be held accountable for their job.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you one other example. In the city of Lexington.
You have the whole rest of the show, so don't feel like you're rushed.
Okay. So
if you have more examples. I got to tell people, first of all, listeners, I was going to have another guest on, Representative Stephanie House, who was going to be on to talk about infant mortality, and there's some legislation being proposed at the state level. And Stephanie and Senator Shirley Smith are having a wonderful energy fair, I'll call it, where people who are having problems with their energy, utility bills, and so forth can come and get some help. And last time Stephanie sent me a text, they had over 200 people. And so that's why she wasn't available because
that's going on today.
People that they had.
That's going on today.
And they had people that they had to work with. So I just wanted to let people know that Stephanie gave her apologies, but I am going to have her on because we've got to talk more about infant mortality. So that's real serious. Okay, so sorry to cut you off.
That's
okay. I forgot to tell my listeners that. Okay, so go ahead.
So I'm just giving another example about reducing council. So in the city of Lexington, Kentucky, 47% of their community, 47% of it is African American. They have one African American elected to a 16 member council.
Wow.
One African American to represent 47% of their population.
Wow.
We certainly cannot go to such a model. And people cite, I believe it's Cincinnati, that has a at-large type of setup. They're trying to go to the model that we have. So the people who are trying to reduce council, using them as a model, they trying to go to what we have right now.
Because I think we have a good model. And
we do.
When people wonder about, well, why are we talking about African Americans? Why do they need representation? Because of institutional racism, African Americans have more issues than white people. I'm just going to lay it out there. Okay?
Go ahead.
And when you talk about what's going on in the city and all over the country, African Americans are disproportionately affected by issues and problems than white people because of institutional racism. So that's why we need to make sure we have an ample amount of representation for African Americans, and Hispanics also need representation, but because of institutional racism, which has affected Black people for years and years and years and years and years, we've got to have the representation.
Got to. So I'm gonna give you a small example on that and try to make this come close to home as possible. So in a white family, somebody Steve is coming up, he needs employment. His father or mother can call Bob and say, Bob, my son needs a job. That he has the job. African American family, Jaquan needs a job. There's nobody the parent can call and get them a job to get them that extra help.
Yeah, so often that's true.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to continue to fight back and continue to advocate so that we have some justice in this country.
And we've got to make sure that our council people are at City Hall advocating for us and our needs in different communities.
Yes, indeed.
We've got to do that.
Yes, indeed. So, Billy, give that website one more time for people to apply for census jobs, because there's a lot of folks out here that could use that money.
Okay, so it's 2020census.gov/jobs. For the supervisors positions, it's 2020census.gov/management.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
I want to thank you. What I'm going to do when you hang up, I found a Q&A about the census.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go through, and just in case some people have some questions, I'm going to answer some questions that are online, just to give them a little bit more information. But I want to thank you for the work that you do. And when you find out, anything else, send me a text so I can share it with my listeners. Okay?
I will get my homework done for you. I have a list. I know I got to check on what are we doing with kids in school in regards to the census. I'm checking on that bill you talked about, and then you gave me one other thing. I'm supposed to.
Don't forget to say the word lesson plan.
Lesson plan for the first one. I'm saying lesson plan. I'm gonna bring that up in our next meeting. Check on that bill, and then get the contact information for who we need to reach out to in regards to these jobs being distributed equitably.
Exactly. Thank you, Billy.
No, thank you.
All right. Take care. Happy MLK Day.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.